Hey everybody, we're back. This time we're going to be taking a look at Centauri Saga by Vesuvius Media. Was really excited for this one. It's one I kickstarted last year in the fall. Finally got delivered. We had a holiday here in the States. It got delayed and things, and finally got my hands on it. Managed to play through a few games and get a good feel for it. I do want to start out by saying throughout the course of the video here, there's some little things here and there that kind of bothered me about the game, and I don't want it to sound like I'm complaining because overall I really do like the game and I love the concept, and the company's going out of its way to remedy all the little problems that people have had. But I think it's important to share with everybody my experiences from start to finish of this product, and hopefully they took some lessons from it. They've already posted a big thing on their Kickstarter page about things they learned. They had to change shipping companies at the very last minute and things, so there was a lot of little problems throughout production. But to be honest, it's the first Kickstarter I've ever gotten that was delivered within a month of their projected end of campaign delivery date. So I have to give them credit on that. And the components and everything for the game itself are pretty outstanding with a few exceptions, which I'll get into. Back of the box here gives you a good estimate of the stuff that's inside. When I break it all out, you'll see there's really a lot of stuff in there. The ships are a little bit smaller than I was expecting, but that's not bad. It actually makes them better as gaming pieces, and there are a ton of them. Anyway, we're going to get right in and take a look, and I'll show you everything that's in here. Now, one thing it's worth noting, if you did buy, the game came with an optional 6-player add-on. It added a 5th and 6th player to the base game. Everything you bought comes shipped in the box, at least if you did the Kickstarter. I think later on they're going to be shipping them separately, so it's something to keep in mind. First off here we have our player boards, and it was kind of a last minute addition. You can see there, my hand behind there. They punched out these holes because your stats are kept track of by sliding cubes along these tracks to keep track of what your current stats are, and they tended to slide on the boards. So they punched these holes for the cubes to sit in. Unfortunately, the boards really aren't thick enough. They're made of a really thin, almost like a poster board type material. And they don't sit in there too well. It's enough that if you bump the table, they're not going to go flying. But had these been made out of something a little bit thicker, I was hoping for something similar to like what they used for the actual map tiles. If the boards were made out of that, it would have definitely been a lot more effective. People have been mounting these on something a little thicker, like a piece of chipboard or cardboard, and then punching the holes and making it quite a bit more useful. It's a really cool idea, just needed to be thicker to really implement it well. But the backs of them are pretty plain. This one's actually pretty scratched up. But so you can definitely attach them to something. It's not going to hurt anything for the game-wise. They do serve their function, though. And next we have our core rulebook. The artwork and thing in here really should make this a cool book, but this is one of those complaints that we're going to have here. The choice in print, the pages came out extremely dark. And see, it's really light in here, so it doesn't show up on camera. It looks much lighter on the camera than it really is. These pages are extremely dark. With the dark text on them, makes it very, very hard to read unless you're sitting directly under a light. And it's been a big complaint about a lot of people. They did release a downloadable PDF file on their website, which this background is much, much lighter, even lighter than it's appearing here on the camera. So it makes it much easier to read. So keep that in mind. If you have trouble reading the book, there is a more eye-friendly version of it available online. That said, it is laid out kind of weird. It takes some getting used to. The first section of the book is your basic core rules, tells you how everything goes. I'm not going to go through all the different stuff in here, but what makes it strange and a little bit different is that once you get to about halfway through the book, it switches to a scenario book instead of having a separate book for it. Find where it starts. There it starts. And the actual scenarios are in here. Now, some of the rules for the various scenarios are actually in direct contradiction to the regular rules in the book, or they change some of the things. So it's very important to read the specific rules for the campaign or mission that you're playing, as they change a lot of the stuff. Now the cool thing about that is it makes each of the scenarios play very differently. And it's kind of neat because they can definitely put out new missions and things. And we'll get to that when we get to the other components in the game. And you'll see how the missions are affect the setup and everything of the game. So it's interesting concept there. I really like the way they're going with that. And I can't wait to see what kind of expansions we get in the future for that. Next we have an arena rulebook. This one's in here. It explains pretty much how the player versus player aspects of it go. This was one of the Kickstarter unlocks. It has a couple different map scenario setups, and there's a handful of cards and things that go specifically with this. But this allows you to play the game in a player versus player aspect, where the main core rules of the game are for a co-op experience. This next book was actually part of the add-on. I'm kind of reviewing the whole thing together instead of separating them out because I bought mine together. But I do have the cards and things separated out to show you which ones came with which. The 6-player add-on book just gives you some extra rules for adding in the extra 2 players. Changes a couple of the scenarios a little bit and adds a new option like a versus version of the Arena Jump Gate mission and so on. Also came with a new scenario called Reaching for the Stars. Next we have a little flyer that they threw in here. It's Join the Hive. Has numbers down here I don't really want to show because it has my serial number on there. It gives a web address so you can go to their web page and enter your code to register your game. As well as the Hive part of the site allows players to make their own scenarios, mix and match things. They have a forum on there. Mainly, this is going to combine with some other games that Vesuvius Media put out. Cosmic Pioneers is already on Kickstarter right now. Actually, I think it just wrapped up. But you can mix and match pieces between the different games to really make some interesting scenarios and player-made stuff on their site. Go check out the Hive. It's on hive.vesuviusmedia.com. Next, we have the base tray here. Pretty neat thing. I think... I'm going out on a guess here because I've moved everything, so I really don't remember where everything came from. The ships and everything originally came in bags, but I took them out because we've actually played a couple games. But I think this compartment might have been meant for various components, the dice, maybe the tokens and things, where this one was made for the cards. And I actually split up cards in both of them, and the problem I ran into is this one has this nice thumb slot here so you can get the cards back out. This one does not, which leads me to believe that this one wasn't designed to hold cards in the first place, even though it's about the right size. So keep that in mind. If you put cards in here, you're going to have a heck of a time getting them back out. Just want to warn people about that. Definitely the dice, the tokens and things will fit in there, and then you can keep the big compartment for just your ships. Everything's kind of crowded in here now because we were playing yesterday, and I just kind of threw everything back in. But it is a nice setup. It holds everything in the base game and the 6-player expansion with room to spare, so that's always nice. You have your smaller cards here, which are all your upgrade decks for your various ships and the event deck. These are all your tokens up here. Plenty of tiles for making your maps. In here we have our captain cards, all our various scenario decks and event cards for those. The common and special reward cards and things are all in there. And then in this side right now I have the Kickstarter add-on cards and the ones from the 6-player expansion, which we'll get to. And then plenty more tokens and things. So we'll start fishing things out of here and going through them one at a time and showing you everything. So to start off, we have our 2 starting hex tiles. This is a Planet Hope, I believe is the name of it. And the Jump Gate. This is pretty much what you're going to be using to start almost every mission, except for the ones that come with a pre-built space setup. You get 4 of these thick nebula tokens. These are used in a lot of scenarios for where actually I think most of the scenarios for where the bosses are going to spawn. There's a black hole token. And then there's a ton of different ones for planets, open space, asteroid fields, and so on. I think those are the main ones. There's just different variations of those. And each one has a number and a color-coded symbol on here. For people who have trouble with colorblind, not only are they color-coded, but they're also shape-coded. So you have a circle, square, triangle, and octagon in different colors. And then the number also pertains to how much movement it takes you to move through those various tiles. And that comes into play later with your engine stat on your ship. Overall, there's 31 different tiles in there of those various types. And it allows you to build a pretty decent sized map by the end of a game. And a lot of games seem to be using this hex design for the boards now, where you can lay out the tiles and make your own map each time. The only complaint I have with it is that if you have a really smooth table surface like the wood here, they do tend to slide if they're bumped. Some newer games have been using a more of a jagged edge to make a like little hexes on the corners, basically, to interlock so they don't slide as much. I do like that concept more. These are probably a lot easier to produce and much easier to store because they're smaller overall. But it's something to keep in mind there. If you have something like a felt line table or whatever, it shouldn't even be an issue you shouldn't have to worry about. Next thing we're going to take a look at are the event cards. These pop up when various bad things happen throughout the game. Either when Raider surge, which are the bad guys, when the Raiders surge and have a rush of new ones coming, it will flip one of these over into play. Also when the bosses come out, and when you fail an exploration check. These do various things. They can affect you once a turn at the beginning of the turn, or it can be continual ones like this here, where you can't upgrade your research lab or starport while it's in play. There's various ways to remove these. The easiest one is to spend 2 of your tokens that you'll pick up through various means throughout the game to remove one from play. But you also need those various tokens to build star bases and activate other abilities that you may need to complete the scenario. So you really have to pick and choose which ones of these are worth getting rid of and which ones you can live with. Next things we have are the upgrade and power up decks for your armada. You have your upgrade for your starport and your power up cards. There's a stack of 10 of each for every color armada. So each player is going to get their own stack. And these are the various things that you can use to upgrade your ship along the way. There's 2 of each kind. On the other side you have the blue and the red. The blue are your common ones, which you unlock earlier. The red ones are the rarer ones, which you only unlock a couple of towards the end of the game. They're going to affect the various stats of your ship by adding bonuses, as well as giving you a special ability that you can use. And of course the red ones have stronger abilities, but they're harder to come by, where the blue ones are more common. Everybody has access to the exact same ones of these, and which ones you pick and choose to use throughout the game are going to customize your fleet more to your playstyle, as well as the current events that are happening. Next thing we have are our player cheat sheets. These are a pretty nice thing to have. They're very useful throughout the game. They show you the different phases of the game and what takes place during each phase. They are a little vague in that, like, for upkeep, that's all it lists is upkeep. So the first few times you play, you're going to have to reference your rule book to see what can be done during upkeep. Once you learn the different phases, though, they become much easier and much nicer to use. On the flip side of these, it explains all the different raiders. Level 1 raider, which is what you're going to start out fighting, and then as they level up, they become level 2 and level 3 raiders. And it gives you the different stat lines for those ships and the different rewards that you're going to get for killing them. You get one of these for each player, so you don't have to pass them around. Everybody has their own copy. Next we have our different commanders that you can use for your fleet. They do have different bonuses and stats. They also, some have bonuses to research lab like this, and everyone has a special ability. There are female and male. In the base game here, you've got 4 male, 2 females, and each one offers a slightly different ability and a slightly different set of skill points to begin your game with. They're one of the few things that actually is unique. So each one of your armadas is going to have this. It's going to make each player slightly different than the rest to begin with. But overall, as I said, with the upgrades, everybody has access to the exact same thing. So other than your captain, you can all do pretty much the same build. But because you start with these different amounts of points, you're going to be different from there on. And it's kind of a nice thing that each of the cards has a different back to give you a quick reference of what's what when you're flipping through the cards. All the commanders have the armada icon on the back of their cards. Next we have our boss cards. Right now there's only 4 of these, but this is something I can see them quickly adding more of in expansions and things as time goes on. There's a little skull icon on the back here, which is kind of cool. And these are our 4 main bosses, which we have models for in the game. The Red Baron, the Corrupted Crow, the Black Carrier, and the Asteroid of Death. And they all have various special abilities. Their stat lines are here on the bottom, as well as their special ability that is active as long as they're in play. And then up here you have your rewards for destroying them. And you basically shuffle these up, and then during the game you're going to be drawing whatever the top card is whenever a boss spawns, and that's what comes up. Oddly enough, there's 4 of them. The Black Carrier in every single game we've played so far has come up first, no matter how much you shuffle them. And even just here, I was mixing them around, flipped it over, and it was the top card. So it's kind of an interesting thing, though. But the bosses are very interesting. Each one has its own unique aspect and feel. I think the Corrupted Crow is probably the easiest one to fight. But that's kind of debatable on the stat-wise. The Red Baron's not too much of an offensive guy. His ability, though, moves around raiders, which can be bad for you. And he has 10 hit points, which takes a while to whittle down. The Carrier is by far, I think, the worst in terms of difficulty. It is by far the hardest to kill. And the fact that it spawns extra raiders every turn comes up very bad when you're trying to clear out the raiders and make yourself paths to get whatever objective you need to be done. Next we have our scan cards. I expected this deck to actually be quite a bit bigger. There isn't too many cards in it, but it serves the purpose because the game only lasts so long and these pretty much get reshuffled, so you're not going to run out of them. It just seemed odd that there wasn't as many as I thought there was going to be. Depending on the scenario, you're pretty much going to be flipping one of these over each turn. You're going to look at the first column here, and in this case we're going to be looking for a octagon planet. And you would look at your map, and then we actually have the octagon planet right here. If that space has no enemies on it, and you're playing a mission where you need the XPMs, you're going to spawn one on that planet. If that wasn't on the board, or it was occupied by a raider, you go to the next one. And the next one here is an asteroid field with a triangle, and you'd follow the same step. You'd look for one. If there wasn't one in play, then you'll flip over the next 2 cards in the deck of tiles, which will be upside down. And then you have to place a new tile so that it's touching at least 2 other tiles, like so. You couldn't put it over here. It would have to be there like that. And you put out 2 new tiles. Then you go to the next step, which is down here at the bottom, and it's going to spawn raiders on the yellow circles. So then you're going to go to every tile on the board that has a yellow circle, and you're going to put a raider on it. And if there's already a raider there, it spawns a higher level one, and things progressively get out of control as time goes on. The longer you play, the more tiles that are in play, the more chances that the symbol that you draw on the bottom of the card here is going to be out there multiple times, and you're going to be spawning multiple raiders. You combine that with the fact that the carrier may be in play, spitting out tokens. There's an event card that spits out makes all raiders spawn at a higher level, and things get out of hand really quickly if you don't keep a tight rein on them. The next deck we have here is the exploration cards. They have the satellite dish on here, which is the exploration token for the game. So it helps you remember which decks are what. Like I said, they all have different icons, which is nice. And these are flipped basically whenever you try to explore an unexplored sector. Unexplored sectors are pretty much everything that isn't face up on play. Now, these usually come into play when, say, your ship is here and you wanted to jump to here. You flip over a new tile, you put it there, and then on your encounter phase, you're going to flip over and complete whatever the task is on the top one of these cards. So at the top here you have your name of what the event is, a little bit of fluff text down here with the artwork, and at the bottom you have two choices. The top choice is usually easier but offers less rewards. The bottom one is usually a lot more difficult. In this case you would need a 2 successful shield test. In this case you need a 5 successful movement test. And then the rewards down here. On these ones, the tokens are the same. The Astardium crystals you get are the same, but you get to choose, instead of a common card, one of the more special cards, which are hugely powerful. But being able to complete those lower tasks is a lot more difficult, and chances are you're not going to be able to do them until end game. If for some reason you fail the top one, or whichever test you decide to choose, your ship takes 2 hull damage, and you don't get any of the rewards because you failed it. These are very important because not only do they open up more sections of the map at a faster rate because you're flipping over more tokens and adding them to the board, they also needed to get those exploration tokens that you're going to be using to build star bases or activate various special abilities throughout the game. Next we have our action cards. These have a little base icon on the back. The whole game is actually based on a real-time strategy web browser game, so a lot of these icons come straight from that. You draw these from various abilities and things you do throughout the game. Killing enemies gets you a card. There's different various other ways to get them as well. And these go in your hand and can be used for a variety of different abilities. Again, they have a title at the top, some artwork, and then explains what they do and what phase they can be used on at the bottom. There's all sorts of different ones, from cloaking devices that basically let you move through sectors with enemy units without paying a penalty. This one allows you to re-roll. There's various different hyperdrive extends your movement, things like that. These ones are really useful. They help you get back your actions so you can use them again in the same turn, and so on. Some repair your ship, some block damage. And the nice thing about these is that in a multiplayer co-op game, you can be playing these on anyone else's ship, so everybody can kind of be working together. You can use your cards to boost up their attack or their damage so they may survive or win a combat that they're a part of. Next thing here is the special, I'm not sure what they're actually called. They're special cards. You usually draw these when you kill a boss or do the hard exploration challenges. These are much, much better rewards, but the chances of getting them are much slimmer and only come under certain situations. There are some amazing things in here, outright killing enemies to adding extra slots to your ship for upgrades. Some really, really cool stuff in here. They are, like I said, extremely rare, so there aren't very many of them in total. This is another one that they could really add stuff to later on to add some more variety and things in future expansions. Definitely cool cards to get, and you're always excited when you get to draw one of these because no matter what, it's always going to be something cool and useful. Next we have the intelligence report cards. These ones are, a lot of the remaining cards here are special ones that are only going to get used in certain missions and things, which is kind of a unique aspect of this game. Not all of the components get used in every mission, so you can see a lot of stuff laid out here, but not everything is used every time. They're very mission specific, and these are one of them. And these are basically going to be randomized layouts of things for various missions. And there's a handful of them here. So it lets you replay the same mission that uses various setups, and it's going to be different each time depending on which card you draw. It's kind of a cool aspect. I think there's only one mission right now that uses these. There might be 2, I can't remember. But we did use them in one that we played. And the randomized aspect of it changing each time is kind of cool. And then all the rest of these are pretty much used for various missions. And it kind of gives you an idea of what you can do because they change per mission. The basic Doom counter here is just a turn counter used for a couple different missions. There's a jump gate icon on the back there. And then all of the scenarios that come in the game have these different scenario cards. And for these they have, this one's fixing the jump gate. This is what you see a lot of people play for reviews, especially the early ones. They all use this mission. And you have a 1-player version here with your turn counter at the bottom. A 2-player on the back, a 3-player version, and a 4-player version. And just basically the amount of bosses that come out and the amount of tokens that you need to put in there change depending on which version you're playing. As a good example of what I was talking about before, the mission here, fixing the jump gate, also comes with a small deck of cards for fixing the jump gate. And each time you try to install one of the XMP tokens on here to repair part of the jump gate for part of this mission, you're going to be trying to resolve one of these cards. And there's everything from getting attacked. In this case, you get attacked by this guy here. You have to fight this off in order to successfully install and get these rewards over here. If you fail, the XPM's destroyed and you have to start over. The only real complaint I have about these, I love the mechanic, the idea that they're there. They only included 6 in the set, and if you're playing the 4-player version, you're going to be using 5 of the 6. So as the game progresses, you know exactly what's left in the deck after a couple playthroughs, and you're going to know what's coming up. I wish there had been more of these, a little bit more variety, so they could be a bit more randomized. But again, it's something they can add to later on and expand upon these, as well as add more missions in the future that use little decks like that to add a lot of cool new stuff to the game. Next thing we have is a ton of these little black wooden cubes. These are going to be used for various things, keeping track of your stats on your player boards, as well as keeping track of the hit points of bosses and enemies as you beat them up. Next we have our handful of these little lightning bolt tokens. These are actually your action tokens. Everybody starts with one of these, and you get more as you level up your ship throughout the game. You use these to activate your captain's ability, as well as the abilities on the various upgrades that you're going to add onto your ship throughout the game. You also get a handful of these yellow action tokens. These are used for the special single-player scenario to allow you to control 2 different armada ships, and that's all in the core rulebook. You also get a pile of these exploration tokens. Again, they have the satellite dish icon on them, same thing that's on the exploration cards. And these you're going to get from completing those exploration cards, as well as a few other things throughout the game. They're used to activate various special abilities and cards, as well as building your space stations. You need 3 of these and 3 combat tokens to build a space station, as well as you can spend these 2 at a time to clear any events, or mix them with combat tokens to clear events that are in play. These are our combat tokens. They got little turrets on them. It's the icon used in the game to mean combat. And these are got through killing enemy raider ships from bosses. And these are used to activate special various abilities, as well as with the exploration tokens, they can be used to clear out events that are in play in combinations of 2, either 2 of these or 1 of each. And it takes 3 of these and 3 exploration tokens to build those star bases again. The game comes with a pile of 10 standard die 6s. I actually like the fact that they're square corner die 6s. I hate rounded ones. They end up rolling off the table. You also get a ton of these little clear acrylic gems. They're very clear. A lot of times you get these, they're frosted. I don't know if the camera's really going to show that too well, but they're crystal clear, which is kind of cool. Hoping they don't scuff up over time, because they look really cool. And these are actually your currency in the game. You get these by killing things, by achieving different objectives and things. And these are what you're going to spend in 2 at a time to level up your armada, gain new abilities and things. Next we have our XPM tokens. These in the early versions of the game are represented just by blue cylinders. Now we get these really cool transparent blue well, XPM tokens, I guess. The game only comes with 5 of them, which it was supposed to, but it would have been cool to get extras so that you could make some player design scenarios. But at the same time, it would mess up the balance on certain missions, like the 4-player mission where you have to install all 5 of these, so you're going to have to wait for them to show up. And if people are carrying them, then and they're all gone, no more will show up. So it's kind of a... They limited them for a reason. These are the player tokens for the armada ships. They're really cool, a little bit smaller than I was expecting. They're about the size of the Firefly ships. And have quite a bit of detail on them, though. I can't wait to see some people paint these up. Some of the finer details on them, however, which the camera does not want to focus on here, on some of them, these little guns and protrusions and things can be bent and whitening, sadly, because it is a very stiff and firm plastic that they're made out of, but it did allow them to put quite a bit of detail in. You end up getting 4 of these for the players in the base set, plus 2 extras. The base set comes with green, orange, yellow, and blue. You also have your star-based tokens in the matching green, orange, yellow, and blue. And these are what you're going to construct for various reasons throughout the scenarios. In the fixing the jump gate scenario, the bosses are actually have impenetrable shields, and you have to build one of these in the sector they're in order to even fight them. For other scenarios, they're used for other purposes. There's one scenario where there's actually lost ones of these, and you have to go find them in order to activate them. For the bad guys, get these little level 1 raiders. They're kind of neat. I'm actually missing a couple. My set was short a few, but they're already in the mail to be replaced, so that's cool. But you should have 10 of these. And these are what are going to spawn for the most part when you do those scanning reports and raiders show up. Pretty easy to kill. Cool little models. They are a little bit difficult to pick up at times, but not too bad. They have all kinds of little details on there that can be painted up. If something bad happens and a raider spawns on top of another raider or moves on top of another raider, or heaven forbid you get the event that makes them spawn at level 2, you're going to switch to these little guys. As with the other ones, these little ones have all kinds of cool details on there. If somebody's willing to paint them, they will look really cool. They even look cool without being painted though. And these are quite a bit more difficult to kill. So keep that in mind if you end up running across a bunch of these on the battlefield. They are mean little guys. And if, heaven forbid, things go terribly wrong for you and you have to spawn another ship on top of one of those level 2 birds, you're going to spawn these little level 3 guys. And these are monsters. They're like mini bosses on their own. Cool looking models. Pretty good size too. And you get 10 of these. And these little things are bad news if they come up too early on in the game. Next we get into the boss ships. So there's the Black Carrier. It's a little bit bigger than the player token. A lot more guns and turrets and things on it. Cool looking boss ship. Again, lots of detail in there that can be painted up if you want to make them look even more outstanding. The next boss ship we have is the Corrupted Crow. This one's another really interesting design ship. For some reason this one has the base attached to it. I think because the bottom of it's so small they couldn't attach it the way the other ones are. But very interesting looking ship. Probably the easiest one to fight, so keep that in mind if he comes up as your boss. But still a cool model. Next we have the Asteroid of Death. Kind of looks like a big space mine. Not a heck of a lot to it, but cool nonetheless. He's a nasty one because he lowers all your dice rolls, so your shields get lowered, your attack gets lowered, bad things happen when he's in play. And lastly we have the Red Baron. It's like a really big version of one of the Raiders. Again, he's got these little tiny guns that can be bent on some people's models. Well, I got lucky on mine, as well as these big like cannons or thrusters or whatever on the top here. Might have a little bit of flash there sticking off on the end that I got to trim off still, but overall it's a really cool looking model. My disappointment with this one is that it doesn't have a base like all of the others. It doesn't even have a place to mount one, but I may add, either drill a hole or do something to make it mount one, because I did get a couple extra bases in my set. It'll almost fit like right in between here and stay in place. It may actually, if I trim out like that middle peg in there and mount that on there, it'll just make him look that much more intimidating on a base. Right now he just lays flat. I think it was to make him look like the standard Raider ships down here. For the extra cards from Kickstarter, again, I don't know if these are going to be part of the game or not, but I just want to throw them in here. You're going to get 2 extra captains, one female, one male, to add to the collection of captains that are already in the game. You get a handful of cards here which are specific to the arena. These get shuffled into your normal deck if you're playing any of the arena scenarios, and they have various abilities. They're extras that, like I said, only get added in those certain situations. Then we also have a pile of victory point tokens, again, which are only used in very specific scenarios. So there you got to look at everything that came in the base game, lots and lots of cool stuff there. You can't even get it all in frame. You got the player boards there off to the side. As I was saying, though, you're not going to be using all of this every game, which is kind of cool. Like, all of these various cards down here are specifically to certain missions. You have the intelligent report cards, which you're only going to use for specific missions. The arena cards over here for specific missions. These 4 decks up here that are color-coded are for your armadas, so you're only going to be using one of those per player, and each player is going to have their own set aside. So depending on how many players you got, you're not going to be using all those. Things like that. So it really does limit down what's on the table. You're not going to have all this big clutter because you're not going to use everything every game. And it does add a lot of variety because each mission mix and matches those new cards that pertain to that specific mission. It allows you to have some variety that the game's not the same every time. Like, only when you're doing the fixing the jump gate missions do you have to worry about those fixing the jump gate cards. Only when you're doing the final confrontation one, only when you're doing the open confrontation mission are you going to run into those Ravager retaliation cards. Things like that, all of which add more replayability to the game in my mind and open it up to some really cool ideas for future expansions. And there's a lot of really cool just things you can do with the game. So there's lots and lots of variety there, lots of replayability. And despite the handful of things that people have issues with in the game, overall, it's a really cool and fun game, and I really enjoy it. And I don't want to sound overly critical with all the little complaining things that I do throughout it, but in the end, it's a solid and fun game that has lots of room to expand. I just wanted to add on here that it was available at the time of the Kickstarter, and most likely will be available eventually for purchase extra on. But there was a 6-player expansion, added 2 more player boards, 2 more ships, kind of a beigeish color, and a gray. You get 2 more of the reference cards with the bad guys on one side and the turn order on the other. You get a mission for reaching for the stars, again with 2 cards for 1 through 4 players there. A couple cards for an arena jump gate scenario, which basically is the repairing the jump gate type scenario, except it's done in teams and you're trying to be the first one to repair your gate. And it's a race pretty much. And then you also get a couple more captains, 1 more male, 1 more female. Really neat little add-on here. One thing to keep in mind with it is that none of the existing scenarios for the game, I believe, with the exception of the jump gate one and maybe some of the player versus player ones, I don't usually do those, so I didn't take a look at those. But none of them support more than 4 players. So unless you make up your own scenario or do one of those things, you're going to be limited to only 4 players. Not that that's a terrible issue. You could probably work 6 players in there, and I don't think it would change a lot, but it is worth mentioning and something to keep in mind. Overall, as I mentioned before, I'm really happy with the game. I like the variety that's in there. I like the replayability. The fact that they have the Hive website to go design new and interesting scenarios for the players, as well as combining it with their other game, I think is a really cool idea they had. And definitely opens it up to lots of possibilities. There were a handful of issues here and there. Most of them are being remedied already. The company's been great. They've been right on top of that. And I'll give Vesuvius Media credit for that. They've been interacting with people on Board Game Geek and on the campaign page and doing a great job of making sure that everybody's happy, getting pieces that were missing and things like that. And I have to say they're one of the better companies I've seen when it comes to that aspect. The components are top-notch for the most part. The ship models are excellent, and they're really cool to see on the table. The game looks great when it's in play. And once we get a few of the minor issues remedied, which the company, again, I said, was doing a great job on, I think it'll be a really solid game out there. And I hope they start selling it on their website. I'm not sure if they still do, but I think once the Kickstarter problems are all taken care of, and they have that all settled, that they're going to start selling things like the 6-player expansion, possibly an expansion with that colony ship as well as other stuff. And we'll see where they go from there. But Centauri Saga by Vesuvius Media, I give it a thumbs up. I enjoy it, and it's definitely one I'm going to keep. Anyway, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.